do you get your spouse on board with this whole investing thing?
Yeah, so we get that question really, really frequently. It's somebody discovered our content, they watched a bunch of stuff on YouTube, they got really excited, but they feel like they've got this big anchor when their spouse isn't really interested, or they don't get it. They're not seeing this investing thing as beneficial to their life. And we get this question all the time. How do I get them to go from this to realize that this is the most amazing thing that we've discovered?
Hey guys, my name's Arianne and this is my better half Chris. We created this channel so good people like you can learn how to be financially free with passive income. So today's video is all about how you get your spouse on board, because financial freedom means nothing if you don't have a spouse at the end of it. So the first thing you need to do is make sure that you are on the same page. A lot of the times one of you is going to be some crazy visionary entrepreneur who sees yes, we're going to do this investing thing and it's going to be great. Usually one of you gets that first, right? Usually it's the more entrepreneurial of you. And sometimes we don't tell the other person. We assume they read our mind. And guess what? They don't. They don't read our mind. So we actually have to tell them the process we went through. And maybe that all was silent, from watching YouTube videos and reading things and they never got it. So you got to actually tell them, hey, honey, I learned this, this, and this. And they said that if we do this, this, and this, we can have passive income. We don't have to work anymore. You can spend more time with the kids. We can spend more time with the kids and all that fun stuff. So you actually got to tell them the big picture and how you're gonna get there, instead of just bulldozing and running with it without telling them anything.
Yep, surprises are not great. It's better when we are on the same page and we understand where this train is going, so that we can help decide whether or not that's the direction we want our train to go. And so she says something really important there, which is this shared purpose sort of concept. When you're getting on the same page, you're talking about something that you're going to do together. And that brings us to our second point, which is to find something that's important to your spouse who is not interested in order to use as bait, for lack of a better word, to get them interested. So let's say spending time with your kids is the most important part of your spouse's dreams, right? And they want to go to Disney, for example. Well, Disney costs, let's say, $5,000, right? So why don't you say, hey, after we buy 2 or 3 rental properties, it's going to generate enough money for us to take the kids to Disney every year for the rest of the time they're growing up. That might rock their world. They don't care about houses, they don't care about tenants, they don't really care about the money, but taking their family to said adventure is really important to them. Maybe they're a car guy, and you can say after our passive income reaches a certain amount, you can buy your Lambo. Another option, they like really fancy purses, okay? Every time we buy this many houses, we can buy a purse every year, or shoes, or insert whatever rocks their world. The important thing here is to figure out what rocks their world, and connect that to what you're doing. Whatever crazy adventure you're about to take them on, make sure it seems worth it to them by using what's important to them as the bait.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be anything big, right? Maybe you just go on more dates, right?
Date night.
So maybe when you buy a rental, you celebrate with a nice fancy date night.
Yeah, and the goal here is for them to get excited. Every time you do what you were going to do anyway, they get excited about it because they know the goal. They know the dream.
The third tip is the 80-20 rule. So we all have heard the Pareto principle, right? Like the 80-20 rule, where 20% of what we do gives us 80% of our results, and 80% of what we do gives us 20% of our results. So that applies to relationships as well. So if you haven't already read the 5 love languages, I highly recommend you read it, because it's pretty much the 80-20 rule applied to marriage. So basically what it says is we all have different love languages. So for example, my love language is acts of service. So I like it when Chris does something for me. And Chris's love language is quality time. So in the beginning, when we didn't know what each of our love languages were before we read the book, we would when I wanted to show love to him, I would do something for him. But then he wouldn't really receive that as love. He'd be like, oh, okay, she does something for me, whatever. What he really wanted was to spend time with me. So I would do the dishes for him, and then he'd be like, can we do the dishes together? And I'm like, no, that's not efficient at all. Why would I want to do that? Right? And then sometimes when I wanted to receive love, I would ask him, hey, can you go to the store for me? And then he'd be like,
why don't we go together?
And I'd be like, no.
We both missed it entirely.
Right. So once we learned this nice little love hack, right, the relationship hack, we now know that, oh, I need to actually dedicate something this day to giving him quality time. And now he knows that he needs to do something every day for me, so we both feel loved. A lot of times, if you're not on the same page with anything you're doing, right, especially something new like investing, usually it's because one of you doesn't feel loved. So no matter what the other person wants to do, the other one doesn't want to do it because they don't feel loved. So read that book. Highly recommended. It definitely has helped our marriage a lot.
And it moves the needle a lot. It's one of those things where it takes so much less effort if you're trying to convey it in their language, and you can pretty much ignore the rest of them. There's 5 of them. You can do the one they care about and ignore the rest of them. It saves you so much time. And then on top of that, if someone is really, really in love with you, they're going to go along with whatever crazy scheme you can come up with. And speaking of languages, the next thing we're going to talk about is your risk language, or your risk tolerance, how comfortable you are with risk. So usually one person in the relationship is almost always going to have a higher risk tolerance. They're going to be more comfortable taking risk than the other person. And the goal here is to figure out which one of you is the most risk averse, so the least comfortable with risk, and make sure that you show that person how whatever you're doing has been brought down into their risk tolerance, right? So they're okay with this much risk, and what you were doing sounded like this crazy thing to them. But if you show them all the steps you were taking to mitigate risk, right, to reduce the risk, and you show them how it met their standard, now they're not uncomfortable anymore. Now they understand, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. And that makes all the difference, especially if one of you is very risk averse, very uncomfortable with risk. Showing them all the steps you've taken to reduce that risk down to their comfort zone, they will 100% appreciate that, and they'll be much more likely to get engaged. And the second thing is going through that process with them, writing it down on paper and showing them this is the worst case scenario that can happen. This is what is likely to happen. And this is the best case scenario, right? If you show them how the worst case scenario is still going to be okay, they're going to be much more involved. They're going to be much more okay with this thing. They may not be involved, but they're going to be supportive.
The last tip is they don't actually have to be involved in investing. So there's a lot of different types of people, and some people just aren't very interested in maybe investing or real estate. They don't actually need to do it with you. They just need to support you. And supporting you doesn't mean they have to do it with you, right? Like supporting you might mean that they take care of the kids, or they take care of taking out the trash, or they're just there supporting you along the way. It doesn't have to mean that they're in the business with you, and it doesn't mean you have to be like co-working in the business at all. Chris and I, that's actually one of the things we do. We try our very best not to treat each other as co-workers, right? Necessarily. We are each other's spouses, and we try our best, even when we do have responsibilities we share in the business, to treat each other as spouses first, not co-workers, because that's usually like one of the worst things that happen when you have a business together or invest together. They can just be there and love you and support you, and that's why you're married, right? Like, because they love you and support you.
They don't have to do the stuff as long as they're supportive, right? And even if you can't find a bait that gets them involved, as long as they're on board and they support you, you still get everything you need out of them. There's no longer this anchor that you feel is dragging you down or preventing you from making the decisions you want to make, because you know that your spouse is there with you.
All right, hopefully you found some of those tips useful. I know we did. We didn't know any of these tips when we first started working together in our business, so these have definitely helped us.
If you'd like to learn more about working with your spouse, make sure you click that like button and hit the subscribe bell. It really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm, and it also helps you get more content like this.
All right, see you next time. We're not sync. This way.